Thank you, and good morning. My name is Teresa Wong, and I'm part of the dreaded payload safety process. And I'm here to tell you it's not all that bad. I promise, it's going to be okay. So unfortunately, the charts that I'm going to talk this morning are slightly different from the charts that you have on your CDs, but the correct charts will be posted to the website. And if not, you can contact me. I'll send you the charts, whichever. Also, I'm going to be covering some of the ground safety review panel process. Unfortunately, none of the ground safety guys could make it out here and talk to you guys, so I'm going to cover that as best as I can, since our processes are very similar. You can go off to the next slide, please. So just a quick overview of what I'm going to highlight this morning, tell you all about the PSRP, GSRP, how we're made up, what we do, what you do as payload organizations, and how to get through up to flight. Next slide, please. So the GSRP is significantly smaller than our PSRP. Paul Kirkpatrick is the GSRP chair. James Manier is the deputy chair. Maxine Daniels will handle all of your GSRP data. Excuse me. And then you have your ground safety engineers. Next slide. PSRP has 3 chairs, and lucky for me, I have Scott Wolf, one of our PSRP chairs, here with me. So if you have any really hard questions that's above my pay grade, ask Scott.
I'll ask her.
We also have 3 executive officers for the PSRP, and they're the process owners. They own how we do business, basically, and they own the rules of the game. Ray and myself are the technical leads for the team, and Mindy Mudd is the queen of our data management system. All of the data that you submit to us will go through Mindy, and she manages that website and that database. We have our technical writers and our team of safety engineers. We are a total of 13 payload safety engineers, including myself and Ray, and depending upon the complexity of your payloads, you will have 1 to 3, maybe 4. It depends on the complexity of your payload. Next slide, please. So these next 2 slides is a lot, and you can't really read them, but the point I'm going to try to make to you is we have a lot of people who support the PSRP. And if you have some crazy laser in your payload, we have the laser guys to talk to. If you want to send Robonaut a girlfriend up to space, we have people who can help you with that too. So if we don't have the people readily available, we know people who know people, so it's going to be okay. You can skip over slide 6 and go to slide 7, please. Key documents for you. We live and breathe off of 13830, both the GSRP and PSRP. 13830 will be your key document here. It is our process document. It lays out all of the data submittal requirements, when to submit, what to submit, and to who you need to submit your data to. KSC uses the KNPR document that was formerly known as the KHB 1700 document. If you've ever used and went through KSC before, their handbook has been superseded by this KNPR book. None of the requirements have changed, is what Paul Kirkpatrick told me. It's just, it looks different, and it's in a different book, but the requirements are all still the same. PSRP uses the 2 NSTS 1700.7 books. The ISS addendum is strictly for the ISS, and the core document is for the shuttle. I was leading a team of folks to transition the ISS addendum to a station-centric document, and that has yet to be approved. It's in signature cycle right now. And that is the SSP 51700 book. So once that gets released, that will supersede the ISS addendum. The 18798 book, only in NASA will you find a book that interprets the requirements for the book. That's essentially what it is. And we're working to transition, probably to incorporate some of these interpretation letters into our requirements, but that'll be future revisions for the 51700 book. 26943 is a great resource if you've never written a hazard report before. It kind of outlines the expectations from the PSRP for certain generic hazards that we have. Even if you have written a hazard report before, but you're dealing with some crazy battery chemistry that you don't know how to write a battery unique hazard report, 26943 has a generic battery hazard report for you, and that is a great starting point for you. Next slide, please. The other two documents that I have listed here are really specific to toxicological and biological materials that you may have in your experiments. They require a different subset of requirements, data submittal, sorry. You can get all this stuff through our websites, and if for some reason you're not able to get to the website, let us know. We'll help you and we'll get the documents to you, or your PIM will also help you with that as well. Next slide, please. So what do? We make sure your hardware is safe. We protect the crew, be it ground or on orbit. We make sure it doesn't hurt anybody or yourselves. Ground covers everything that is processed at KSC. If you're launching on an IP vehicle, I would suggest you follow the rules of the game from that IP-specific launch vehicle site. Paul is working with the other IPs to kind of streamline that process a little bit, but that's all still kind of in work. PSRP covers everything transport and on orbit. IP vehicles, we make sure your hardware is safe when you arrive to station. We call that safe on arrival. Next slide, please. PSRP reviews your safety data package that you submit to us. We review your data, we make sure you comply with our requirements, and we review your hazard reports, and Scott signs your hazard reports prior to flight. The PSEs, we will be your liaisons to the panels. We are the panel's eyes and ears. We help you coordinate any meetings that you want to come to the panel and talk to about, any working groups and everything else, comments, they all filter through us. So we are your eyes and ears to the panel. Next slide. So these next two slides basically is just to tell you we have a very broad spectrum of panel members on both the GSRP and the PSRP, and we get the different perspectives from the different directorates to kind of help us make our decision on how we want to move forward. So next slide, please. And next slide. What do you do as the payload organizations? You build the packages. You are responsible for the safety of your hardware. You close out your verifications. Please make sure that when you submit data packages to us that you are conscious about the timelines that are outlined in 13830. That's usually what kind of bites the POs in the butt is they come to us a week before they need to ship and they say, oh, we need to do our phase 3. Oh, why didn't you come and tell us this before? Our calendar is full. So be mindful of your timelines because our calendars do fill up very, very quickly. We're scheduling meetings already for November, so keep that in mind. We'll accommodate as we can, but it's hard sometimes. Next slide, please. I think this slide basically, I just wanted to highlight the verification piece again. You guys are responsible of closing out your verifications. We'll help you along the way. If it's a verification that you need to close out, say, fracture control summary report approval or something crazy like that, that our engineering guys will have to give you the approval. We'll help you interface with our engineering guys, but it's ultimately you guys own those verifications. Next slide, please. When are you considered done and ready for flight? You are done when ground safety says you are done and signs off on your checklist. All your hazard reports for flight have been approved, action items closed, NCR's done, VTLs are closed. All that is done and wrapped up and we can put a bow on it. One thing I want to highlight is when you get to ground processing, and it says that completion of phase 3, 30 days prior to deliver to KSC. And Paul Kirkpatrick asked me to pass along that if you want to come before all that and do like a pre-phase 3 review with the Kennedy guys, feel free to. If you guys have your hardware built and operations all laid out, but you're still kind of finalizing your tox or biomaterial, you kind of have a general idea of which direction you want to go talk to the ground safety guys. They'll help you work through the whole thing. Same thing with us. We're here to help you through the whole process. come to us whenever you want. We'll accommodate you. PSRP, we start tracking flight at L-90, and if you didn't think the PSEs were annoying before, you'll really think we're annoying at L-90, because we'll bug you for your verification closeouts, we'll bug you for your safety certs, and all the other documentation that you owe us. We start tracking it at L-90. And when all that's said and done, Scott and the other chairs will submit their COFO endorsements to the program saying, yep, the POs are safe, they did what they were gonna do, they did what they said they were gonna do, and we're good. Next slide, please. I think I covered most of what was on this slide already, except that after your phase 3, and if you've had any anomalies, testing anomalies or anything, or design changes, you gotta bring them back to the panel. And we gotta reboard the panel, we gotta go through all that again. So it'll be a Delta phase 3 depending upon impacts to the safety. Next slide, please. DMS is where we house all of your data, and it's all segregated so that if you have any ITAR export control data, nobody else can see your data but you and the PSRP. All the IPs, if the IPs don't need to see it, the IPs won't see it. If you're flying on an IP vehicle, though, we will be sending your data to the respective IP vehicle owner, so that needs to be all export cleared data. You can access the DMS through those websites, and I also put the GSRP website on there for you. Next slide, please. Mindy Mudd is the queen of the DMS. She can get you your access to DMS. She will help you upload your data to DMS. If you choose not to upload your data, that's okay. Send it to Mindy, and she will be that interface to making sure all that data is on the DMS. We will work with Mindy as PSEs. We work with Mindy to make sure that the panel gets the data. And the panels will review the data, submit their comments. PSEs will compile comments and send those comments back to you as the POs. Next slide, please. One thing of note that Paul asked me to mention is that a lot of the times when POs have tox or biomaterial in their hardware, they like to just tell GSRP, oh, JSC tox is already bought off on it, so we're okay. We don't need to give you anything else. That's not true. You know, our JSC tox guys look at it from the perspective of the hardware is built already, and all your bugs have been filled into the hardware, and the crew's gonna manipulate the hardware on orbit. The ground crew is worried about you filling the hardware and building the hardware at KSC. So if you have any tox or biomaterial, please let the KSC guys know. It's important for them to know what they're dealing with here. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of a pictorial. There's not much exciting pictures that I could show you for the process except for step timelines. So this is kind of to show you when we expect to see the safety data packages and what phase of your design reviews, and the maturity of the hazard reports for each phase. Usually phase 1 is when you have your preliminary design review, phase 2, critical design review, and phase 3 is hardware delivery. Hardware's been built and we're testing and everything else like that. Next slide, please. This is just another flow chart of hazard identification process. So one thing I want to highlight here is, as you're building and designing your hardware, please keep safety in mind, because a lot of times POs come to the PSRP and they're well within their design phase of the hardware, come to the PSRP and say, oh, we don't meet this requirement, we don't have enough levels of containment. So the PO gets pushed back and they have to redesign their hardware and to add an extra level of containment. So please keep safety in mind as you're going through this whole process. Next slide, please. So what do we do with unapproved hardware? I was kind of desperate for a picture. So I know I've said a lot, and I know I've said it before. Just like everybody else here, we're here to help you get through all of this. So come to us early in the process and come to us often. If you do those two things, you're gonna be okay. You'll make it through the safety process, I promise. It's not that bad. Um, i- In the backup charts, I have a lot of more of the technical aspect of the PSRP, but if you want to come talk to us offline, please feel free to do so. You have my contact information, and if not, you can talk to one of the executive officers. So, any questions?
You suggest that we come to you often and early. In putting together a proposal which includes this aspect of it, the safety issues, we would have to come to Marshall. How many times, say, in the space of a development of our payload, which is about 30 months, do you think we should be at Marshall?
If you're out at Marshall, you can come to us whenever, wherever. We're here at JSC, but if you're stationed out at Marshall and you want to come and talk to us at PSRP, we can set up a teleconference and we can have meetings wherever.
Okay, so teleconferencing is fine.
Sure, no problem. We do it all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Tell us the difference between the process timeline for an IP launch and a shuttle launch. Because you said that for IP launches, you typically have to provide data to the IPs, right?
Yes.
So is there another review process there, and how does all that work, I guess?
The launch vehicles have their own review process. I believe ATV and HTV is at L-6 months that the data needs to be provided to them. So that HTV and ATV are a little bit more difficult, but it's workable. We can work through the timeline. But that's what's written in the requirements, I believe, is L-6 months. For PSRP, if you do the math, I think it's L-4 months is when your data is due. But your PIMs should be able to help you with all that too, your timelines. Any other questions? All right, thank you.